Well, hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for coming. If I wasn't here, I'd be at that cool talk on the emergency services software. So my name is Felicity Brand. We're going to be talking about audience experience today. I've actually got title regrets. I think this is a bit of a snooze fest, and I think based on the keynote this morning, I would rather call it humanising tech communication. So I'm going to share some practical things with you that hopefully you can take away and implement tomorrow. You don't have to take notes. All the slides are available afterwards, so just sit back and let it all wash over you. Please feel free to do anything you need to do to take care of you. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I live and work, the Wurundjeri people, pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also like to do a gratitude statement, so I'm very happy and grateful to be here at DrupalSouth. This is my first Drupal event. Can't wait to get to know some more like-minded folks today. I work as a communications consultant at Open Strategy Partners. I abbreviate that to OSP. Going clockwise, I'm involved in the open community, Write the Docs. I help organise the Write the Docs Australia annual conference. In my spare time, I hang out at Typo3. So, quick sidebar. Typo3 is an open source enterprise CMS. It's very popular in Europe. It has 33 composer dependencies in common with Drupal, so same but different. Typo3, together with Drupal, WordPress and Joomla, are in the Open Website Alliance, and they work together to advocate for open source projects and influence policymakers. So go check that out. Here's where I work. We are a tech strategy and communications agency. We're based in Cologne in Germany. I am based in Melbourne. So I work asynchronous in English. Our core values are empathy, clarity and trust, and we incorporate those values in our content deliverables and our workplace culture. Here are the founders of OSP. Some of you may know Jam. He was a very early employee at Acquia. He's been in Drupal for 20 years now, and I saw him in the photo this morning from 2015, so there you go. I'm going to talk about, up on the slide there it says website, but really I'm talking about any type of content today. So the why of a website, we want to communicate and connect with people. Communication and connection creates this audience experience. An optimal audience experience comes from good content. Good content is based on a foundation of technical truth, content strategy, and communication that connects. And communication that connects is based on empathy, clarity, and trust. And I'm going to talk to you about how that is. So this audience experience, we're talking about content that resonates with people, that caters to their interests, answers their questions, solves their problems. But what makes content quote unquote good? It's not a subjective judgment, it's empirical. You've got to have these three things. Your messaging and communication needs to be clear, compelling. You've got to understand your audience. What ruins their day? How does your product or service make it better? You're thinking about your presentation and structure, your delivery format or medium, okay, and also you're looking at your experience of your audience. So is your content readable, accessible, using appropriate language? So in the middle of this beautiful Venn diagram, we get something called good. So my talk is in three parts, and the way we get to good is we've got three pillars. So the first is a foundation of technical truth. And that just means not having vague benefits, so efficient tools, streamlined processes. Specificity is your friend. So the way we drill down into that truth is using this thing we call a value map. You need a content strategy. So that's going to map out who, where, how you communicate your value. And when you create your content, you're going to use empathy, clarity, and trust. So I'm going to tell you about this magical combination that happens when you nail these 3 values. So first off, let's look at technical truth. I really like this phrase. It might sound like a bit of a buzzword, but some people may have heard the idea that developers are allergic to marketing. A lot of you will have this experience of the gaping chasm between a marketing department and a tech department. What we really want to do is break down those silos, capture your product features, the challenges they solve, the benefits they bring. And so the way we do that is with this thing called a value map. But first I'm going to show you a tree metaphor. So the idea of the tree metaphor is that the roots, so what have we got? Information about your features, we've got information about your audience, and we've got information about your competitors. And when you have this kind of network of roots, it's going to bear fruit. All your strategic initiatives, your positioning, your customer journey. So this is what we're trying to get to with the value map. Next, I'm going to show you, give you a bit of a mental model. It looks complex, it's highly structured, and we're going to start down at the bottom here with our features. What we like to do is, through workshops, talking to people, we will look at a product or a service and map out each one of those features, okay? Then we're going to group them into areas and a further layer of organisation into categories. For each one of those we have, so imagine a statement, so a 1 or 2 sentence statement for the feature. And then for each one of those we do benefit, challenge, solution. So that's looking at what does the feature do? The challenge, so that's your audience pain point. What is the feature trying to address? So that's the solution. And then the benefit is a layer over and above that looks at a measurable, what's in it for me. Once you have all that, you can get your fact-based positioning, you can get a unique selling point, you can get taglines. So you're getting like this massive database. It's an inventory, a living library of micro-statements about a product. So it's really cool because if you have a really complex product, if you have a product that's been developed over 15 years, you can end up with a lot of assumed knowledge about what we think the product does. We're pretty sure we know the features, but once you drill down into this, you get really granular. And the other thing I like about it is it's multi-directional. So if you've got someone that comes in at the top and is looking at these claims that you're making about your product, they can say, well, how does it deliver that? You can go down, all the way down to the feature. Here is how it's doing that thing, and you can even go to the code base to prove that, yes, it does that. So that's the how going down. But you can also go up with the why. So if you're really technical, you're living down in that tech layer. If someone comes along and says, why are we investing in this feature? It will give a technical person the language to explain, well, we're working on this feature because it solves this problem, which is a problem for the users. It gives them this benefit, which is actually linked to our unique selling position. So it helps them kind of influence decision makers and budget holders. So, as I said, it's a living library. It gives you technically accurate communication. It's a single source of truth and agreed upon terms. Wouldn't that be nice? Unified fact-based positioning. So it's really powerful. I really like the value map. I'll show you a few ways that we use it. This is just a product landing page on a website. You can kind of see how we've pulled directly statements from the value map to build out that website page. This is zoomed in, so here is like a feature area, marketing campaign management. And let's see if I can read the text. So you can see a challenge, solution, benefit. So the challenge is you're trying to work between lots of different systems, which is time-consuming and unnecessarily complicated. That's the challenge. The solution is to integrate tools into the back end. Okay, the benefit of that is you can connect your marketing funnel with your backend. So you're without repeatedly switching systems. That's your benefit. And then the feature statements, you're going to say, well, the way we do that is we can integrate with these third-party services. So that's the value map. Next, we're going to look at content and communication strategy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. They have whole conferences devoted to content strategy, but suffice it to say it's really important to have a plan. Without a plan, you don't know where you're going. Content strategy is often overlooked because it's really tempting to dive into creating content. But you really do need to have your product vision, look at your information architecture, look at your content planning. Are you having structured content, semantic content types? Do your editorial planning, what content goes where and when, and your content management. So you've got to create your content, you've got to look at when you're retiring and archiving that content. So when you nail the aspects in this, you're going to be delivering a great audience experience. So you do that hard work of strategic thinking and research. And it's so important because without it, you're speaking into a void, right? So your strategy is giving you vision and direction, focus path. You're going to understand your audience's pain. You really need to feel their pain. You also will understand how you fit in the competitive landscape, so you can focus your communication on your unique value prop. And you're going to be creating stuff that has a narrative that really connects to your audience. So pillar 2, very important. But let's move on to pillar 3, which is my favourite. I live here. I am a writer and editor, so I love talking about this. At OSP, we use a framework, I guess, that we call authentic communication, and it's based on these values of empathy, clarity, and trust. Everything that we create, our content, is... before I say that, I wanted to talk about reviewing. So we have an iterative review process. So we all have a task to create content, to review the content, and then a third task to review the review. And often, the person who reviews the review is the original author, but it's not always. So we needed a way to make that process repeatable and scalable. So what we did was we created a shared language, and we created these things called editing codes. We have an in-house style and writing guide. We codified our writing principles. So we have these semantic shortcodes to explain why we make the revisions or the suggestions or give the feedback that we do. We don't always use these codes to suggest revisions. We can also use them to celebrate things that are done really well. So I love this system. I could talk about it all day, but I just had to introduce it to you because I'll be showing you some codes up next. First, let's look at empathy. How do we operationalise empathy? So empathy is about understanding your audience, putting yourself in their shoes. You really need to understand their context, where they're coming from, and feel their pain. We feel seen when others recognise our pain. So how do you do that? You talk to them. So we'll do loads of interviews. We do a lot of audience research. You can gather that through surveys. Quote your subject matter experts. It's really important to quote authoritative sources. Stakeholders, we'll talk to all the stakeholders in a company that we can. And the idea is really to just break down these silos to get the perspectives and to arrive at a single source of truth. How do we write for empathy? Well, here's where we're seeing some of our codes. So We have this code with them. What's in it for me? What that means is we lead with the benefit. Show your audience why they should keep reading. Connect. We use language that connects. Avoid jargon and technical terms, but use technical terms if you're writing for a really technical audience. So that's just understanding the language that's going to hit with your readers. Criticism, we avoid hidden and implied criticism in our writing. FUD, we avoid fear, uncertainty and doubt in our writing. We try to write inclusively to help readers feel respected and welcomed. And PAX is the Latin word for peace. We use non-violent communication. We choose peaceful metaphors. What this looks like in practice, we use Google Docs, but it would work in Word as well. You're in suggestion mode. You would highlight a piece of content and add a comment on it. So we preface our comment with the code in all caps, CNECT. I might say, not sure if this language is going to hit right with our audience. Let's try this alternative instead. When the author receives that feedback, we have this shared language, so they know what connect means, and they can say, oh yeah, good one, okay, right, resolved, and it's done. Or they might see it and think, no, actually, I chose that word on purpose, and they can say, I chose that word for these reasons, resolve, bang, done, move on. So our review and feedback process is a flat structure. We don't have a mean red pen editor. It's a conversation, and the codes allow us to be very clear and learn and, teach and learn from each other. They also grant us psychological safety because getting feedback can be scary. But if you anchor them in our writing guidelines, which we have, agreed to abide by, it distances you from the feedback. It makes it not personal. And everyone knows what the feedback is pertaining to. So I really love this system. The other cool thing about that is because we all feel safe, we've baked empathy into our writing, but it transmogrifies into empathy being embedded in our workplace culture. So clarity is about being clear about the facts. How do we do that? First one we want to look at is technical accuracy, and we'll have that in our value map. Logical rigour, use a clear narrative structure, so we avoid logical fallacies. Tight writing, we want to keep it crisp and sharp. And we choose presentation that is going to work best for the message. So use a diagram if that's going to help, use lovely descriptive headings. So that's clarity. How do we write for clarity? We have these codes. Lead, don't bury the lead. That means start with your most important point first. And I should say this applies we use these codes for all the content we create. So websites, landing pages, blog posts, social media messages. It doesn't matter the size of the writing. You should never bury the lead. Okay, Spock, that's our logic code. So if this, then that. We want to keep that narrative flow happening. Okay, crisp, we write concisely. We avoid clutter, we avoid walls of text, and explain technical terms to your readers. That's a really inclusive thing you can do for your readers, to explain terms. If you don't have space to do that in context, you can link out. So here's the kicker, trust. Trust is the foundation for everything we do, and you get that when you have empathy and clarity. We want trust because that's what's going to help your reader or your audience act. Generally, you're communicating because you want them to do a thing, so trust is going to help them click that call to action button. It's going to help them download the Drupal module, what have you. The other way you can build trust is capability and credibility. Show your expertise. You want to show your knowledge and experience. You can do that with a blog, have a podcast, host an event. We recognise and acknowledge others. So you might have an internal kudos Slack channel but you can also do that when you're writing a comparison piece between two bits of software. We openly be our authentic selves. So I started with a gratitude statement today. I like to talk from the heart. Trust signals. So everything is broadcasting trust signals all the time. Here is an example of a free and open source software project. If I'm trying to choose between 5 Drupal modules that seem to do the same thing, I'm going to be looking at these to help me decide. And for me personally, that means I want to look at the way people are treating each other in that project. So I will go through issue threads, I'll go through merge request conversation, because I want to see how are people talking to each other. Are they being respectful? Are they being kind? And that's how I would choose whether to engage with a project. How do we write for trust? Well, we have a code called trust. So we're going to highlight signals of that, and that is often going to be when you're referring to an authoritative source. Facts, we back all our claims with research or an example or a statistic. We use examples to illustrate our point. Quote your subject matter experts. Now this is really important for 3 reasons. 1, it builds trust, okay, because people are far more likely to trust when someone they recognise and respect is saying something. 2, in these days of generative AI, a quote is a human-generated statement, so it's more valuable. And 3, it's really good for SEO. Unique content is valued. So a quote from a subject matter expert is, going to tick all those boxes. We avoid hyperbole, exaggeration, binary comparisons. We just don't do that. And case, we don't waffle. So when you make each point relevant and unique, you're showing respect to your reader because you're not wasting their time. You can find all these resources. So Open Strategy Partners, in the spirit of open source, we like to share our knowledge. So all of this information is available to you. We have a blog, we have a podcast where we talk about how we write. In our repo, we have a very new MCP, Model Context Protocol, which should allow you to use an AI to connect through an API to our frameworks and tools. So please test that and tell us all the bugs in that, because yes, that's brand spanking. I hope I have inspired you today to take away some tips and tools to help you think about the audience experience you're creating. You can take a look at our value map and start building out your own. You could look at your writing guidelines and start creating editing codes, or you can just use our editing codes. Something that I haven't talked about today is our use of AI. We do use generative AI. We use it to create our briefs. We use it for SEO optimization. We created like an agent and fed all our guidelines and editing codes into that. So I use AI to help me edit in a few different ways. And that brings me to the end. I hope you've gotten something out of that. I really sped through it and I'm sorry about that, but maybe there's some time for questions if anyone wants to ask me anything. So thank you very much for your time today. Yeah, oh, please ask questions if you want. No.
So that was great. Just to apply some of that like the writing style and trust elements to content that I produced or have on our sites. How would you go sort of reverse engineering that and auditing existing content to say, okay, how do we make this more empathetic for the user? Like, what would be your process?
That's a great question. And I don't know how I would do that because it would take a bit of effort. Maybe I would use a robot to help me do that because yeah, I would probably try to create an AI agent that was equipped with the context, so your writing guidelines and what you were trying to achieve. Certainly the agent that we have can look, you can feed content in, it will spit it out and use those codes to tell you like where it thinks you're hitting the mark and where it thinks you need adjusting. Yeah, I guess it depends how much content you would be trying to reverse engineer. But that sounds like a big job. And I guess also, like, it depends if it's a cultural shift for you as well.
I think for me, it's more like we've had this product that we've been building for 5 years and it's going well, and I kind of want to do this like 5-year now assessment. We did all that common strategy stuff right at the beginning. Is that still relevant? And like, what parts we need updating?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and maybe we can talk about it over lunch. Does anyone else have any questions or comments or feedback? Oh, yes, you in the front.
In the past, when I've been trying to think about how to communicate to consumers and internally as well about the features and why we have them, I come across a problem that this doesn't intend to solve, which is getting agreement on why even a feature exists. Sometimes they get a bit orphaned, sometimes they don't work as intended, sometimes it was a pet project of someone and they're like, it's cool, but we haven't managed to translate that into benefit for the user. Which this is not designed to fix, but I wonder whether you found that using some of these codes maybe helps identify where people have got differences of opinion about what the benefits might be, and maybe highlight some of the ambiguity, or does it not really do that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we have about 50 codes, but I would say that what you need is a value map, because you need unified agreement on what your features are and what they do. We've had a few clients where, so creating that value map is a pretty intensive process, and you need to make sure you have buy-in and, you know, great big workshops. And we've had clients who have discovered features that they didn't know the product had. So, and it's so interesting, isn't it, when you have to pin people down in a room to say, well, what are the benefits of this feature? What does it solve? Why do we have it? However, if you were just trying to use the codes for that, you can certainly flag ambiguity, clarity, and if you have differences of opinion, that's why having those codes traceable back to an in-house style guide is so powerful, because generally that should quash argument. I have found that anyway as a tech writer. If you have this external thing you can point to go, this is the rule that we follow. So my feedback is not personal, it is, you know. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, all right. Oh, up the back.
I really like the value map, and it's something that I immediately see like as I'd like to, as a takeaway for our page. I'm just thinking about when you start to pull it together, do you get a workshop together to get, like, for example, I'll work with, product, but also delivery, work with developers, designers, and content writers. Does a product person kind of start it off and then get ideas and buy-in along the way, or should we, do a workshop and get those ideas up front?
Yeah, I think you can do it both ways, but generally I think we would go for the first method you mentioned, where we would try and go through raw data that we can find, scraping websites, scraping documents internally, just to get a bit of a framework happening. And once you've kind of consulted all your stakeholders, gathered all your features, generally the way we help our clients is we then take it all away, we create the challenge, benefit, solution statements, and then bring it back for review, because we're good at writing. But you could certainly hash all that out in a series of workshops. Yeah.
It's how you can articulate that up to perhaps leaders that are interested but don't need to know the detail, but really want to make sure what you're working on is the right.
Yeah, yeah. It's so useful. All right, well, I think people are pointing at me. So, all right, time to break for lunch, I think. Is that, yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for listening. Oh, great.